Let's make one thing clear from the start. The more you crave to be liked, the more you surrender your mind. And the more you chase acceptance, the further you drift from who you truly are. This isn't just my view. This was the philosophy of a man who believed most people aren't guided by truth, but by appearances, not by virtue, but by fear. That man was Niccolò Machiavelli. Not a saint, not a cynic, but someone who observed power without blinking. A man who dared to speak the thoughts society punishes you for having. He saw through the herd. He saw that it doesn't want you to be free. It wants you to be obedient. It wants you to smile, to nod, to blend in. Machiavelli saw the trap. The more sociable you are, the more you dilute your intelligence to match the room. Because real thinking isolates. It burns through pretension and leaves you raw. And most people would rather be fake and accepted than honest and exiled. But Machiavelli didn't write for the crowd. He wrote for the mind that dares to rule itself. And if you're still watching, maybe, just maybe, that mind is stirring inside you. Let's not lie to ourselves. Every social interaction has a price. You smile when you're uneasy. You agree when you want to object. You say yes just to avoid being the outcast. And every time you do, you trade a piece of clarity. A drop of lucidity for another second of social comfort. And then you wonder why you're exhausted after a party. Why you feel disconnected even when surrounded. Why your own voice feels quieter inside your skull. It's because you've been shouting to please others. And whispering when it comes to yourself. You think you're evolving. But really, you're just adapting, shrinking. Sanding off the edges of your character until you fit in so perfectly. You disappear. And the world applauds your disappearance. Because a docile mind is easier to control. Machiavelli warned us. In politics and in life, the appearance of virtue is often more useful than virtue itself. But hidden in his words was a deeper warning. When you live for appearances, you forget how to live with depth. Because once you become easy to digest, you stop being nutritious. The more you socialize just to be liked, the more you become like others, and less like yourself. Every forced laugh, every handshake you regret, every silence you keep to protect your image, it all adds up, brick by brick. You build a prison that looks like popularity from the outside, but feels like mental decay from the inside, and you don't even realize it. That's the tragedy. You think you're thriving because people smile at you. But they're not smiling at you. They're smiling at the mask. And slowly, you start to believe the mask is who you are. That's the moment stupidity creeps in. Not because you've lost intelligence, but because you've stopped thinking from your core. You've outsourced your judgment to the group. And the group, let's be honest, doesn't want wisdom. It wants comfort, consensus, predictability. It wants you to play your role. Be the funny one, the agreeable one, the unthreatening one. But never, ever, be the one who reminds others of what they've abandoned. Because if you do, they'll turn on you. Not because you're wrong, but because you're right. And your presence becomes a mirror they don't want to face. So you stay quiet. You nod. You laugh on cue. And each time you do, your mind dulls. Not suddenly, not obviously, but gradually. The sharpness of your thoughts fades into trivia. The fire in your gut softens into politeness. Your questions become scripted. Your dreams become marketable. And worst of all, you stop resisting. Because stupidity has one master trick. It makes you feel smart while you conform. It whispers, you're doing well. Everyone likes you. And that whisper drowns out the roar of your real self. The part that once wanted to question, to rebel, to be authentic at any cost. But not anymore. Now, you just want to be liked. To be sociable. To belong. And the price for that? Your edge. Your soul. Your silence. Machiavelli once said men are driven by two main forces. Love and fear. But in the modern age, we've added a third validation. You crave it so badly. You'll betray yourself for a heart emoji. You'll water down your mind for a seat at the table. You'll echo opinions that aren't yours, just to avoid being the echoless one. And then, you go home wondering why your thoughts feel like static, why your soul feels numb. You think you're depressed. You think you're anxious. And maybe you are. But maybe, just maybe, you're overdosed on sociability. You've inhaled too many groupthink fumes. And now, your mind can't breathe on its own. This isn't about becoming a hermit. It's about recovering yourself. The ability to think without interference. To act without performance. To be without seeking applause. Machiavelli never begged to be understood. He wrote as if the reader was already ready. And if they weren't, he didn't care. That's the spirit missing in today's sociable minds. They care too much. They want to be understood, liked, followed. But true intelligence never begs to be received. It radiates. It polarizes. It divides. It doesn't ask for permission to exist. It simply does. Even if the room goes silent. Even if the party moves on. Even if the group pretends not to hear. Because the group is allergic to self-respecting minds. Why? Because they can't mold you. And people hate what they can't mold. So they'll label you arrogant, difficult, cold, detached. But what they really mean is, you remind me of the freedom I gave up. And that will make them uncomfortable. Your clarity becomes their curse. And here's where the real test begins. Will you soften yourself again just to suit their discomfort? Or will you stand, raw, burning, true, and let the room adjust to you? Most won't. That's why the average man is easy to predict, easy to please, easy to lead. Because he's trained himself not to think too deeply, not to speak too honestly, not to live too independently. He fears the consequences of real thought. And in that fear, stupidity finds its loyal host. Because stupidity doesn't need to shout. It doesn't always look like ignorance. Sometimes, it looks like charm, like sociability, like everyone liking you. But underneath, it's rot. It's decay. It's a soul traded for handshakes and smiles. And now, you face a choice. One you've been avoiding for years. Will you keep kneeling to social ease? Or will you finally sharpen the blade of your mind and cut through the noise? Will you dare to be misunderstood? To be disliked, misread, rejected? Not because you failed, but because you refuse to fake? That's where Machiavellian clarity begins. And those needs? They're weapons used to control them like puppets. But when you cut those strings, when you no longer crave what others can give you, you become untouchable. This is why kings, generals, and rulers spend time alone. Not because they hate people, but because they know. Power requires distance. Proximity breeds familiarity. Familiarity breeds contempt. And contempt breeds weakness. If you want to be respected, create space. If you want to be powerful, learn to walk alone. Because the one who walks alone moves faster, sees clearer, acts without compromise. So what does solitude look like in the real world? It's saying no to invitations that waste your energy. It's stepping away from people who offer comfort, but no growth. It's being okay with being misunderstood, disliked, or even feared. Because you're focused on something larger than approval. It's choosing long nights of thinking, planning, building. While the rest are lost in small talk and distraction. It's not easy. It's not glamorous. It's definitely not popular. But it's how the sharpest minds in history built their empires. Machiavelli didn't study power through people-pleasing. He studied it through psychological warfare, manipulation, and ruthless observation. And he did it alone. So ask yourself, can you detach from the need for constant attention? Can you walk away from shallow relationships and fake support? Can you trust your own voice more than the noise of the crowd? If you can, you are already ahead of 99% of men. Because most will never escape the trap. They'll chase love. They'll chase applause. They'll chase belonging. But the man who builds without needing, who thinks without asking, who moves alone, that man is dangerous. He doesn't need to be liked. He doesn't need to explain. He doesn't need anything. And because of that, he can take everything. The world worships connection. It glorifies relationships, friendships, constant interaction. Tired of wearing masks. Tired of not knowing which version of you is real. And you want out. But getting out doesn't mean vanishing. It means detaching. It means showing up without bending. Being in the world, but not owned by it. Being visible, but not diluted. Being known, but never predictable. That's the essence of Machiavellian detachment. Play the game, but never become it. Smile, but never kneel. Speak, but never chase validation. Show your teeth when necessary, but never your need. Because the world does not respect those who need it too much. The world devours those who try too hard to belong. And the world elevates those who can walk away from it. That's why the sovereign mind stands out. It carries an aura that comes from absence, not presence. The sovereign mind stands out not by being everywhere, but by being uncatchable. And most people hate what they can't predict. That's where your power lies. In your unpredictability. In your refusal to play roles that cost you your soul. In your silence when the crowd screams. In your stillness while others dance for attention. You become the anchor in a storm of noise. The reminder that not everyone is bought. That not everyone has a price. And people won't know what to do with you. Some will admire you. Some will attack you. Most will misunderstand you. Let them. That's not your burden to carry. Clarity comes at the cost of comfort. And you've paid that cost. Or you're beginning to. So now, the only question left is, what kind of life do you want to live? One built on performance and applause, or one that feels like yours, even in silence, even in rejection, even in solitude. Most choose the former. It's easier, softer. You get the likes, the parties, the praise, but you also get the rot, the slow corrosion of knowing you're a product, not a person, a reaction, not a cause, a mimic, not a mind. But if you choose the latter, if you choose sovereignty, you walk alone, at least at first, but it's a walk that forges kings, not clowns. You begin to think differently, speak differently, live differently. You say no more often. You stop explaining yourself. You let silence speak for you. You don't chase friendships. You attract respect. You don't ask for support. You build strength. And in that transformation, something extraordinary happens. People begin to adjust to your reality. The very crowd you once tried to please now shifts to accommodate you, not because you begged, but because you became unbending. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." But the sovereign mind doesn't need fear. It doesn't need love. It demands space. It doesn't beg for admiration. It earns distance. And distance becomes respect. Stop apologizing for your seriousness, for your intensity, for your depth. The world has enough clowns. Enough people who are easy to digest and easy to forget. You weren't made to be forgettable. You were made to disturb, to awaken, to shake minds out of their comfort. But to do that, you must stop being sociable, not stop being kind, but stop being fake. Stop choosing connection over truth. Stop confusing attention for affection. Let people misunderstand you. Let them gossip. Let them drift away. You're not here to maintain their illusions. You're here to burn yours. Ask yourself, who am I performing for? Who benefits from this version of me? And who suffers? Usually, it's you. You suffer. Your mind suffers. Your truth suffers. So stop. Stop feeding the lie. Stop drinking the poison of social ease. The more you obey it, the more it owns you. And one day, you'll wake up in a successful life, with a mind that feels like a stranger. You'll have friends, fame, even power, but no voice, no clarity, no edge, just a polished machine. In a world of machines, is that what you want? Or do you want to remain wild, raw, electric, real? You can't have both. You must choose. The road of real intelligence is lonely. It's brutal, but it's the only road that leads to yourself. And at the end of that road, you don't find applause. You find peace. Peace that doesn't depend on being liked. Confidence that isn't fed by compliments. Identity that doesn't wobble in a storm. Machiavelli knew this. He knew human nature is weak. That most people can't hold truth without flinching. That they prefer beautiful lies to ugly clarity. And he didn't pity them. He didn't try to change them. He simply built a philosophy for those who could handle power without illusion. And now you hold that philosophy in your hands. Not the sanitized, Instagram-friendly version, but the real thing. Sharp, cold, liberating. What you do with it is up to you. You can walk away, or you can walk through. Burn your fake smiles. Burn your need to fit in. Burn the scripts you've rehearsed for social survival. And when the smoke clears, let's see what's left. If it's confusion, good. If it's silence, better. If it's pain, perfect. That's how you know you're shedding. That's how you know you're leaving sociability behind. And what replaces it won't be empty. It will be real, sharp, clear, and entirely yours. Welcome to the other side. Clarity isn't a final destination. It's a battlefield. The moment you begin to see through the game changes tactics. People who once smiled at you will now squint. They'll call you off. Distant. Too intense. Not because you've changed, but because you've stopped dancing to their rhythm. The moment you stop echoing their thoughts, they feel exposed. And exposure breeds resentment. Prepare for. Embrace it. Machiavelli never promised safety. He offered strategy. And the strategy is simple. Think for yourself. Act with precision. And never let your hunger for approval dictate your decisions. The smarter you become, the lonelier it feels. But that loneliness isn't emptiness. It's refinement. It's the absence of noise. The silence required to tune into your internal compass. That compass won't lead you to comfort. but it will lead you to truth. And once truth is yours, you can't trade it for applause. You'll find yourself in rooms full of laughter and feel hollow inside. You'll hear conversations and recognize the recycled phrases, the scripts people use to avoid real thought. And you'll stay quiet, not because you have nothing to say, but because nothing real can survive in that shallow air. You'll start leaving parties earlier. Stop answering calls that don't feed your mind. Begin building a life with fewer people, but stronger bonds. And even then, you'll guard a part of yourself, not out of fear, but out of value. You'll learn that your mind is no longer for public consumption. It's a weapon, and weapons are not toys. Not everyone gets to hold them. Not everyone deserves access. This will unsettle others. They'll sense you've changed, even if they can't explain it. They'll say, "You're not the same," and you'll smile, not to agree, but to acknowledge the obvious. You're not the same, because you've stopped being negotiable. The old version of you, the sociable one, was available, approachable, relatable. This version, it's elusive, reserved, strategic. People sense you've stopped needing them, and it unsettles them. Because in a world addicted to attention, indifference is power. And when you no longer flinch at the threat of being alone, you become untouchable. Understand this. Being misunderstood is not a flaw. It's a filter. It keeps out those who are only drawn to your image. Not your essence. Every time you're misread, it's the universe removing distractions from your path. Every misjudgment peels away a layer of camouflage, revealing who actually sees you. And if no one does, good. Then you finally get the chance to see yourself. Not the version you perform, but the raw, unfiltered consciousness behind your eyes. That's where sovereignty begins. Not in performance, but in presence. The kind of presence that doesn't shrink or swell depending on who's watching. The kind of presence that sits in silence with itself and feels no urge to escape. That presence terrifies society because it can't be bought, can't be guilt, can't be manipulated. It's what Machiavelli called fortitude of spirit, the inner resilience that kings possess. But that spirit doesn't come from praise. It's built in solitude, tempered in rejection, forged in the moments where everyone leaves. And you remain undaunted. This isn't romantic. It's ruthless, but it's the only path to self-command. And that command, it's the birthplace of power, not the kind that screams, the kind that walks into a room and makes others adjust, without words, without effort, just presence, just truth, just unmistakable clarity. But that clarity must be defended, because the world will try to pull you back, with distractions, with guilt, with seduction. It will whisper, "Come back just a little. Be more friendly. Be more agreeable." You'll never sit in a crowd and forget yourself again. Because now, you remember. You remember the cost of pretending, of shrinking, of fitting in. You remember how every nod, every forced laugh, was a betrayal wrapped in politeness. And you refuse to pay that price ever again. You've tasted the loneliness of becoming real, and discovered it isn't loneliness at all. It's clarity. It's freedom. And freedom, once tasted, cannot be untasted. You've stepped outside the loop. The cycle of proving, pleasing, performing. You've broken the rhythm that kept you spinning in place. And now, you stand still while the world spins around you. Not out of arrogance, but out of knowing. You no longer water yourself down to be digestible. You no longer echo to be accepted. You no longer kneel for applause. Because you've learned, every time you do, you lose altitude. So you rise. Not for revenge, not for recognition, but because it's the only direction left. After you've burned the masks and kept the mind, you've chosen the harder path, the lonelier one. And in doing so, you've escaped something most never notice. The loop, the endless cycle of trying to be enough, for a world that doesn't even know what enough means. But now, you've stepped out of it. You're not perfect. You're not finished. But you're free. And now that you've tasted freedom, you'll never look at small talk the same. You'll never say, "I'm fine," without flinching. You'll never sit in a crowd and forget yourself. Because you've remembered what the world asked you to forget. That the mind, when sovereign, is the most feared force in existence. So from here forward, be feared. Not because you're cruel, but because you're clear. Not because you dominate, but because you cannot be owned. Be feared because you no longer speak from a need to connect, but from a place of having already arrived. And when you arrive like that, without apology, without performance, without glancing sideways for approval. You terrify those still trapped in the crowd. You no longer play their game. And yet, somehow, you still win, not by competing, but by detaching, not by dominating the room, but by making the room adjust to your silence. Your very presence becomes a contradiction. You don't fight for attention, yet people feel your absence. You don't shout to be understood, yet your silence echoes longer than their noise. That's not mystique. That's power, but not the kind sold in self-help books or whispered in locker rooms. This is Machiavellian power, sourced not from chaos, but from clarity, not from manipulation, but from mastery over your emotional appetite. The appetite to please, to belong, to fit in. You've starved it, and in starving it, you fed something higher. Your integrity. Now, the true test begins. Not whether you can remain silent, but whether you can remain sovereign. When the world tries to pull you back in, when they flatter you with invitations you used to crave, when they say, "We miss the old you," hoping you'll slip back into a version of yourself that was easier for them to manage. But that version is gone. It died the moment you realized. Every fake smile was a small betrayal. Every nod a quiet mutiny against your own mind. And you buried that version without a funeral. Quietly. As it should be. Because rebirth never comes with applause. It comes in silence. Through sacrifice. So when the world offers you the same old deals, visibility for authenticity, popularity for peace, relevance for restlessness, you'll smile.